Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video, I'm going to be doing a talent deep dive on Vanguard of Justice, this talent. If you follow the channel already, you know I've been very critical of this talent, and I had my reasons why. There's a few people commenting of like, well, they're trying to, combine it with other talents and everything. I'm like, yeah, I understand that, but in my opinion, it was too difficult to, especially with the 2 points, to get everything that you need for this combo, right? Now, some things have changed. Even though in my last video, I was probably just, I was still a little bit angry from some of the changes, like getting rid of Ret Aura and just giving us Crusader Aura for some reason. And a couple things have changed though that made me want to at least try this out now, and that is, so what has changed? So what has changed is Radiant Glory no longer works with Divine Wrath. So this is an extra talent point from when I was first testing out Vanguard of Justice. And then what also changed in the last changes was Crusading Strikes now is probably the same or worse than Templar Strikes, which got massively buffed. Now this could get nerfed and it could ruin everything, but Templar Strikes is a viable option now. And quite good. Like it might be too strong. Now, when you take out Crusading Strikes, you no longer have to take Zealot's Fervor. Those two kind of go together. If you have Crusading Strikes, you kind of want to take Zealot's Fervor as well. They just pair together beautifully as talents, right? And so that's another talent point that you don't need to take right there. And when I got rid of Divine Wrath, I ended up kind of putting that point into like Inquisitor's Ire, for example. And so what I was noticing is that I already had 2 of the talent points. And so I only needed to do 2 more, right? And to try Vanguard of Justice effectively. And so what I did is I think I had it in High Lord's Wrath or Rush of Light. I can't remember where I had that at. But I was like, okay, well, let's try Vanguard of Justice without either High Lord's Wrath or Rush of Light, whatever. I think it might have been Rush of Light. And I also had this as well. As you can see, I have Judge Jury talented currently. So I had both of them, and then I was like, maybe I can get rid of one of them. And so now this allows you to kind of put this combo together. If you don't know what the combo is, it's kind of a wombo combo kind of thing going on. So we have Inquisitor's Ire, which is every 2 seconds gain 5% increase damage to your next Divine Storm, stacking up to 10 times. So you get a strong Divine Storm if you're not constantly using it, which automatically kind of pairs with Empyrean Legacy, which is after you cast Judgment, your next Final Verdict casts Divine Storm every 20 seconds. The internal cooldown resets. Okay, so you get a powerful thing every 20 seconds. It only takes 10 seconds for this, and this takes 20 seconds to charge. So they these two just naturally go together already. But it's normally not worth taking Inquisitor's Ire because another talent would be better. But when we can then combine it with Vanguard of Justice, which also does kind of the same thing, to where when you're using single target, when you're using Final Verdict, let's say, it's going to empower up your Divine Storm. So every 20 seconds, this Divine Storm is going to be quite strong. And so I was able to try this out now, easily being able to take all the talents that I need without, because that was always my biggest criticism, right? The Vanguard of Justice, I'm like, well, maybe if they just make it 1 point, I'll be like, maybe then it would be good. And that was because we were just kind of like talent starved to take everything that we needed to play with it effectively, right? And still kind of are with, if you want to do the Cleave version, which is with Judge, Jury, Executioner, right? And that was my other thing too, because this is another talent point needed. And so I'm trying to find the 2 talent points for Vanguard of Justice and the talent point for Judge, Jury, because the Divine Storm effectively here, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, you're casting Final Verdict all the time, and your only Divine Storm is your Empyrean Legacy, your free Divine Storm. You're not ever actually pressing Divine Storm, so you're single targeting here. And so this gives you a very strong single target Divine Storm. However, it is nice to have a very strong Divine Storm every once in a while when you're single targeting, if you're cleaving as well, right? And so that's why naturally Vanguard of Justice also goes well with Judge, Jury, Executioner, which has also been very nerfed, by the way, since some earlier videos, and we've already talked about it a couple times. But Judge, Jury used to be very strong. It's still good for Cleave. Like, you're still going to take it to Cleave because it's better than not cleaving onto 3 extra targets. But they did nerf the amount of damage that the Cleave does and how often it procs, unfortunately. But it's still good nonetheless. For cleaving, like in a raid, right? That'd be like a good example for it. It lost a lot of its potency in Mythic Plus with the change. So what you have here then, if let's say you're cleaving in a raid fight, you kind of have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-point wombo combo that normally, like let's say in Dragonflight, right? Retail right now on live, you would only have one of these things naturally talented in, and that would be Empyrean Legacy. Everything else you would have set somewhere else. You'd have Crusading Strikes on in Dragonflight, and you just don't have the talent points to take this combo. And now you barely do, and even with this, like, it would need testing to be like, oh, is actually a point of High Lord's Wrath better? Is a point of Rush of Light better? Like, you'd still have to test this out, but this is like kind of the general Cleave build you would want to have. And then if you were just purely single targeting, which 2 bosses in the raid are pure single target, you would get rid of Judge, Jury and either play High Lord's Wrath or Rush of Light, probably would be like my first 2 instinctual thoughts of what you would take there. It would be between whatever simulates higher between those 2, would just be my guess on that. And then you'd still be able to keep this combo. Now, all this being said, I'm giving you all this backstory, all the setup, right? So what do I actually think about Vanguard of Justice? Well, what I think is that it does more damage than if you put these 2 points into, for example, Rush of Light and High Lord's Wrath, for example, right? It does a bit more damage, and a good amount more damage, actually. It makes your Divine Storm quite strong, and it's every 20 seconds, and it's very strong. It's literally 2 times or more strong, 2 times or more damage done than it is without taking this wombo combo, and that adds up to actually being a good amount of damage, and that's on pure single target. If you're cleaving, like with Vanguard of Justice, that's even better, right? It's going to be even better for that. So it actually ends up being a decent talent, and so I am willing to admit that I was at least partially wrong. Although, again, my biggest criticism is that it's 2 points. That would still be my criticism, right? Is that it's still hard to get. It's hard to set up this whole combo. Maybe other specs, do other specs have like a 5-point combo to cleave? To cleave effectively, I have to do this 5-point combo that kind of changes the way I, some of my other build, the way I would normally build or whatever. What's really going to cause an issue is if Crusading Strikes ends up being just the ultimate go-to. And then you're like, okay, well, I guess I just can't play Zealot's Fervor with it. That'll feel bad, but again, if it's more damage, it's more damage. And ultimately, what might happen with that is that it just kind of comes closer, and you can play this way to min-max or something like that, or you can play a different way. Or maybe the other way will be the min-max way, but you can play this way just because you think it's fun or something like that. But it does work, and it is viable. That would be the main takeaway from this. The Vanguard of Justice does work. It is a functional talent. I kept saying it was not functional, but it is functional now with some of these changes for sure. And it is a little bit more damage than to not use it. And so that's a good thing. I think that's cool. I actually like this combo. I still have another criticism as well. So these 2 talent points go together perfectly. This, however, it just does not. So I think actually the problem with it is more so of using execution sentence, right? Which you normally would be with this setup because you're doing pure single target. However, when this is on a 20-second internal cooldown and your execution sentence is on a 30-second cooldown, it is very hard to get your judgment right. It's your Divine Storm gets empowered by your Divine Storm gets activated by casting Judgment. And then that makes your final verdict cast Divine Storm, whatever. So what you kind of need to do, and I played around with this a little bit, and I didn't do perfectly by any means, and it was a damage increase to do this, but it wasn't that much of a damage increase. Is you kind of have to sit on your judgment for a while. You kind of have to just sit on your judgment, and you kind of want to cast it at 19 seconds. So every 20 seconds, it's going to be empowered. You kind of just want to cast your judgment at 19 seconds, and then you better hope you get some procs of your Art of War or whatever, because you need some other buttons to press. And this is where it's good to have Templar Strikes, actually, because you have something to press at least for a lot of the times. Not every time, though. And you need some buttons to press while you just sit on your judgment, and you don't use it again until you're at so it can get empowered at the 20 seconds, but you almost want to wait till 28 seconds if you want that empowered Divine Storm to go into your execution sentence, which is 30 seconds. So one thing they could do to very easily fix this problem is to change these talents to work at every 30 seconds instead of 20 seconds, and then just slightly increase the damage empowerment as well. Since it's more time, you would want it to be a little bit more damage. And then it would fit into your execution sentence without sitting on your judgment. So right now, here's the thing, it is more damage to do that. So to min-max this, and maybe I'm doing something wrong, right? I'm one person trying to test this in a vast sea of players. But it felt very bad for me, even if I timed it perfectly. I used my judgment at 19 seconds. There were some times where I just had nothing to press for 2 or 3 seconds, except I could have pressed my judgment, but I didn't want to press it yet because I wanted to wait till it was closer, ready to use I didn't want to spend, right? I wanted to wait until I could use my execution sentence and put the spender into the execution sentence, put both the verdict and the Divine Storm into the execution sentence. And so, it did not feel great to do that. And it obviously lost some damage by holding as well and not wanting to use that spender into your execution sentence, or not wanting to use that spender before your execution sentence is ready as well. So, that would be my one little critique with this thing, is that when you are doing something to try to really min-max, and they clearly wanted this combo to be a combo, right? It just doesn't quite work with execution sentence very well. Now, I did not test it with Final Reckoning, to be fair, but Final Reckoning single target's also not meant to be, amazing. So this is pure single target. Now, if you were cleaving, right? So if this is actually just intended to be a 5-point wombo combo instead of the normal 4 points, and this is intended to be used for cleave, like a council fight or something like that, right? Then you probably would use Final Reckoning anyways. So then you would Final Reckoning, and then pretty often, or if not every time, you would maybe just have to hold for a second or whatever, and you would be able to have your empowerment into your Final Reckoning, which would be a little bit different there. So that would be the interaction for someone, a dev to look at. So, or when simulations are going to look at via simulations, it's too much for me to try to put on my own plate to okay, I'm going to test 100 times the execution sets, 100 times with Final Reckoning, and see, and there's not even a good 4 target thing to test on or whatever. So yeah, it would be pretty much impossible for me to get too detailed into it. But I did just want to point out, because I have killed this talent so much, that currently the way things are, you can kind of take this combo. Again, for pure single target, maybe you'd take something more like this, something along these lines or something like that, without worrying about the Vanguard for pure single target. But this is good single target damage. It really is. So your talent kind of works. It's a lot of comboing talents in your talent tree. But yeah, and then the interaction's a little bit weird, right? If you're using execution sentence, the interaction's a little bit weird. It's actually most people probably will just end up not worrying about it, because the damage increase that I got, at least, was not significant. But I was being very retentive about it, and okay, I'm not using this until I can put it into my execution sentence. And so maybe sometimes it'd be better to use than others, or you wait every third one, will naturally go into it, and then the other two you just send whenever you want. maybe that's the play. But it was not a very huge increase. Now the problem is if you want to min max, right? The people that want to min max, it shouldn't feel like terrible to min max. Like, oh, I just sit here for 4 seconds because I'm trying to get slightly more damage overall. It should never feel terrible to min max either. So if you're thinking it from a min maxer side, you're like, well, that feels really bad. And then if you're thinking from everyone else's side, it's like, well, I'm doing almost the same exact damage as them, and I'm having fun because I'm not sitting on my buttons. So I see both sides of it there, but that's what I would look at personally. So yeah, I wanted to put this video out because I've been killing it, Vanguard of Justice, but I do think this could be playable, and I think if Radiant Glory stays unaffecting by Divine Wrath, so let's say we never take Divine Wrath in Season 1, and let's say we don't worry about taking Zealot's Fervor in Season 1, then I definitely think that something like this, something along the lines of what I have taken right now on the screen, will be the single target setup and then slightly modified for Cleave fights in the raid. So yeah, so I think it'll actually make it into our main thing, at least for raid, and that'll be pretty cool. So that's going to be it for this video. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel because it helps me out so much. If you're already a subscriber, I encourage you to check out the Patreon. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.